What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. This is the Fantasy Football Fanatics podcast, the official podcast of the fantasyfootballfanatics.com. It is Tuesday, December 26th. Hope everybody who celebrates it had a fantastic Christmas. And, of course, let's not forget, hopefully you guys all had a fantastic and week-winning and, therefore, season-winning outing in Week 16. Oh, yeah, fantasy season. Remember, if you did win, like yours truly, notice CJ's not here, he couldn't handle it, make sure you hashtag on Twitter, hashtag FFFChamp. We want to see all the championships, and we hope that everybody had a fantastic week, safe travels, and good time with family, friends, and of course won their leagues. I mean, that's why you're here. That's why we do what we do, and we're not skipping. Of course, the other guys aren't here. I'm your host, Griffin Palmer. I'm joined by absolutely nobody because I'm not going to let you guys down. Now, I will say this will be a much more condensed show. Week 17. If you guys are listening to this show right now with hopes of getting advice for Week 17, well, you're going to get it. But I will say yet again that this is a time of year that you should not be playing. Reason is, now that we are into Week 17, so many teams have nothing to play for that a lot of your probably week-winning performers, your top studs on your fantasy teams, a lot of those players don't have anything to play for this week because they're locked into their playoff seed. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you see Patriots, Steelers players, Eagles players all not playing this coming week. So, I mean, this is the risk you take. You've got teams that have locked their seed in the playoffs, players like the Jags, which can't be eliminated from playoff contention. The Chiefs are locked in. The Rams are locked in. Panthers and Saints are locked in. So, I mean, some of them are playing to maybe progress their standing and their seed, but, they're in the playoffs. So you can expect all of these teams to sit players. Since so many teams are mathematically eliminated, a lot of those teams aren't going to play their studs if it risks their future and there's nothing to play for. So this is all the reasons why Week 17 is dumb, because most of your teams are going to have to just dive onto the waiver wire to get starters. If you start your studs, these players that don't have anything to play for, odds are you're not even going to get a full game out of them, which is why we recommend. And we're not trying to bash your leagues, but this is why we say don't play in Week 17. I know we don't want the fantasy season to end. I share that sentiment. I think we all do. But, guys, it's bad fantasy football. It's bad football, but it's definitely bad fantasy football. The only players that you can trust are the ones that are playing for it all. So, I mean, you've got teams like the Ravens, the Chargers, the Bills, the Titans, the Seahawks, the Falcons. Those are teams that are fighting for the playoffs. So, I mean, you could probably keep your starters in for those teams, so that's about it. Besides that, most teams are eliminated, a handful are locked in, and that's the way it is. So if you have players on those teams, feel pretty good about it, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But this is going to be a much more condensed show because, I'm recording this on Christmas, so I want to make sure I get something out to you guys. Let's see. I'm going to skip the warm-up because I'm by myself. And we're going to move right into our studs and duds from week number 16. I almost said 6. That'd be weird. Some of your studs. You start off with your top performers of the week. You have Jared Goff, 33.44 fantasy points, 300-plus yards, 4 touchdowns, getting it done like a beast. Will probably be a higher draft pick next year. And why not? It's been amazing, and nothing's going to really be changing this offseason if they have their way. Kirk Cousins, 28.76 fantasy points at number 2. My start of the week, Blake Bortles at number 3. Man, that got off to a slow and shaky start. 26.38 fantasy points. He started off the game with 3 interceptions. There was a fumble in there, too, if I remember correctly. I don't have all the stats right in front of me. But he made it up by going for almost 400 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, Blake Bortles, man, in a losing effort, coming back and saving many a fantasy season. Hats off to you, sir. Jimmy Garoppolo, 25.98 fantasy points. No one saw that coming. Joe Flacco, 21.28 fantasy points. Continuing to be very good for this last quarter of the season. So, we'll see how that plays out going into next year. I still think the Ravens drafted a new quarterback, and Joe Flacco will probably go into his last year without a massive restructure, which will come on his end, of course. We'll see how it plays out, but that's neither here nor there. That's way in the future. And then Ben Roethlisberger, a guy who might be retiring. Who knows? 20.94 fantasy points. Those are your top performers. Some of your top running backs, you have to start with the one, the only, the Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley, guys, if we were going to, and we are going to have kind of an awards type show. I don't know yet if it's going to be a post show, a Patreon show, or on the main show. We have a lot of off-season to cover, a lot of reviewing to be done, but I have to tell you, my candidate for Fantasy Player of the Year is Todd Gurley. The man has had one of the toughest schedules for fantasy running backs, and he has been a monster and had 2 unbelievable performances in 2 weeks in a row in your typical fantasy playoffs. I mean, what more can you ask for? I mean, he goes off for 118 yards on the ground and then adds another 158 yards through the air with 2 receiving touchdowns, one of them a massive play. So, I mean, guys, Todd Gurley, he's my fantasy MVP. I'd be interested to see your comments down below or send us tweets or emails with your candidates because I'm having a hard time thinking of someone that is more of a clutch MVP this season than him. I'll be interested to see the guys' takes when they are back on Friday's show. Dion Lewis, my start of the week, 27.3 fantasy points, came in at number 2. I mean, hey, opportunity, it's a good thing. So yeah, Dion Lewis, monster performance as well. He, of course, got you 2 touchdowns and about 150 total purpose yards. You have Giovanni Bernard, 22.8 fantasy points. C.J. Anderson left with an ankle injury after coming back late in the week with a concussion. So Giovanni Bernard, a guy to definitely watch this week. Bengals, they don't have anything to play for except for playing spoiler to division rival the Ravens. So they could commit to this game. I'm just saying. It'll be interesting to see. C.J. Anderson in that committee, he emerged as a workhorse back and got it done. 21.3 fantasy points, 88 yards on the ground, a rushing touchdown, another 45 yards through the air, and also got a 2-point conversion. So good fantasy production there, depending on your scoring format. Bilal Powell being the most valuable running back this week. This week in New York with the Jets, and then Melvin Gordon, 18.8 fantasy points, were your top. Those are, what was it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, your top 6 fantasy running backs. At wide receiver, you have Larry Fitzgerald, 18.74 fantasy points. The old man getting the job done. He signed another contract, showing he's got plenty left in the tank. It'll be interesting to see how they retool this offseason with him. At number 2, you have Jakeem Grant, which you're probably saying, who is that? And you're not alone. Jakeem Grant is a wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins. Now, this is a guy that's owned in 0.1% of leagues, so don't worry, you're not alone. He had a very good week in Week 14 where he went off for 42 yards and a touchdown, and other than that, he's done nothing all season long, and here we are in Week 16, 107 yards and a touchdown. Also got you 3 yards rushing, so, I mean, that's something. Ted Ginn, dusting off and putting up a great week against the Falcons. 76 yards through the air, a receiving touchdown, another 14 yards rushing. Julio Jones being clutch at a time you needed, 149 yards, no score, which is always disappointing. Juju Smith-Schuster, my start of the week. I was on fire this week, ladies and gentlemen. Won my league, won my sits, and my starts. I feel good. 75 yards and a touchdown. And of all people, guys, Amari freaking Cooper. I mean, you probably didn't start him. I don't know many people who did. I mean, he's still owned in 84.7% of leagues, but I know he was not started in nearly that many. Well, 66 yards and a touchdown. Not a monster barn-burning performance of a week by most of your fantasy wide receivers. So, I mean, that was enough to get the job done, knocking DeAndre Hopkins out of the 6th spot into number 7, where he went for 65 yards and a touchdown. So, Amari Cooper beat him by 1 yard. But, I mean, holy crap, DeAndre Hopkins, if you guys saw that touchdown catch that he had, easily has to be in the contention for catch of the year. Let's see, and then let's wind up at the tight end position, where CJ and I, if you guys stayed through the show on Friday, we talked pretty extensively going through a bunch of tight ends that we liked, because this is a tough position. This whole year, we've talked about, every year has kind of its thing that it's remembered for, and this, to us, so far, has been, and it's not over yet, we have to conclude what we want, but most of the industry agrees, this has been a year of wild inconsistency and just a dumpster fire at the tight end position, a big letdown across the board, after very high hopes. So, yeah, we gave you a lot of extra names, and Eric Ebron was one of those extra names we threw out. We both liked it. We both liked the matchup. He hasn't done much all year, but we thought this was a chance for him. And if you guys took that advice and ran with it, 14.3 fantasy points. This was a combined start of the week from CJ and I. A guy that we said was a boom-bust play, and man, did he boom. Antonio freaking Gates, 14.1 fantasy points. You got to love that. I mean, opportunity, like I said earlier, that is the key. And Antonio Gates, I mean, hey, Hunter Henry went down. Antonio Gates got all the volume. That's what you're hoping for. 81 yards and a touchdown. Rob Gronkowski comes in at 3. No surprise there. If you had him, you started him. Same with number 4, Travis Kelce. If you had him, you started him. Vernon Davis came in at number 5 against the Broncos. He was good for 42 yards and a touchdown, 10.2 fantasy points. And then George Kittle, good for 42 yards and a touchdown, also 10.2 fantasy points. Those were your top-performing tight ends of the week. Guys, the list of players that let you down this week, you're not alone. I know we say this all the time, but I mean, there was a lot of players that didn't reach the minimum thresholds of what we look for in a fantasy start from these positions. Quarterback list is pretty extensive, and a number of these guys were guys you probably were starting. I mean, not necessarily, but here's the list. Eli Manning was only good for 5.02 fantasy points. Oh, it's going to be a dark offseason in New York. Dak Prescott, also, I'm going to be real intrigued to see how they approach the offseason, if they're going to massively reinforce that offensive line and who they're going to bring in to help Dak Prescott, because under pressure, he's not the same guy. A lot of people are saying it's because he doesn't have the wide receiver weapons, but, I mean, you can't say that they were all dropping back into coverage. Ezekiel Elliott was back. I can't tell you how many posts I saw that said, you better hope we don't make the playoffs. Zeke's back. Well, he was in the playoffs for you guys last year, and yeah, you guys made a pretty good run until you lost to the Packers, and he was back this week, and it wasn't enough to get the job done. Dak Prescott, even with extra guys trying to stop the run, only went off for 5.38 fantasy points. Oh, it's going to be an interesting offseason. Derek Carr came in at 3, 7.9 fantasy points. This was CJ's sit of the week. However, his start of the week, Nick Foles, 10.52 fantasy points. That's a big letdown. I mean, we both like the streaming option. It was amazing. And if you watch the game, it was a game of just crazy miscues. So, man, that sucked. Hopefully you went with my start of the week. Blake Bortles over Nick Foles. They were both available in pretty similar amounts. Case Keenum, 11.36 fantasy points. Big letdown there, and what is, again, a very good matchup against the Green Bay Packers. Marcus Mariota, my sit of the week, 11.4 fantasy points. So hopefully you guys took my advice there. Matthew Stafford, he was good for 12.82 fantasy points. Not very good. Tyrod Taylor, 12.84. Drew Brees, 13.16. And Andy Dalton, 13.42. All these guys put up really less than desirable numbers. At the running back position, we have Matt Forte, 0.6, Doug Martin, 0.7, Orleans Darkwa, 1, Jonathan Stewart, 1.8, Thomas Rawls, 2, Amir Abdullah, man, what a bust, 3.2, Joe Mixon, he needs an offensive line. I think that'll be a massive help for him next year. 3.2 fantasy points. Devonta Freeman letting a lot of people down, 3.6 fantasy points. Isaiah Crowell, 4.3, another bust of the year. Well, I don't know if he's that bad, but he's been not what we thought he was going to be. Jerick McKinnon, 5.1. Samaje Perine went down with an injury, 5.4. Kenyon Drake, 5.7. Jamal Williams, my sit of the week, 5.8. Christian McCaffrey, 5.8. Kerwin Williams, 6.5. Lamar Miller, 6.5, and Alex Collins, 6.6. Now, these guys didn't reach the 7-point threshold that we hope for a flex/running back 2 option. Obviously, you want a lot more than that, but that's kind of that minimum. Oh, man, we hope we get at least there. Same thing at the wide receiver position. That's our point threshold, and the list is long again. Jordy Nelson, 1.1. He's just not the same without Aaron Rodgers, and it sucks because he doesn't have a lot of years left. So I'm going to be intrigued to watch him going into next year. Devontae Adams is a free agent after this year, so I'm going to be real intrigued to see how they approach this offseason. Devin Funchess, 1.1. Golden Tate, 1.4. Randall Cobb also didn't get it done, but it was a really bad matchup against the Vikings, 1.6. Josh Gordon, 1.9. Adam Thielen, 2.4. Dez Bryant, man, you have been a disappointment, 2.4. I hate to say it, but Jason was right about you. Brandon Cooks, 2.5. Again, this was what we tried to, Jason and I tried to tell you this leading up to the year. He's going to be very inconsistent. He's going to win you weeks, and he's going to lose you some. Brandon Cooks, a guy that I know a lot of people were targeting in the second, third round, so disappointing. But you can say the same thing about Dez. Jarvis Landry, 3.1. Robert Woods, 3.3. Man, that was disappointing. Marquise Goodwin, 3.7. Honestly, better than I thought he was going to do. Sterling Shepard, 4.5. Rashard Matthews, 4.8. Marvin Jones, 5 points. Robbie Anderson, 5.1. Demaryius Thomas, 5.2. Mike Wallace, 6. Keenan Allen, 6.3. Michael Thomas, 6.6. And Martavis Bryant, 6.8. All guys that didn't quite get to where we hoped they would, especially those latter ones. They were close, but all these guys, the vast majority of which, especially, we were thinking we're going to do way better than this. And then the tight end position, you have Tyler Kroft, 0.3. Oh, man. Julius Thomas went down. He was the only option in my league. I guess it's better than 0 points, but 0.3 doesn't get you very far. Luckily, I was able to overcome and beat CJ. Kyle Rudolph, 0.6. Evan Ingram, 1.2. David Njoku, 1.3. Cameron Brate, man, we had a back-and-forth debate on this one on the show, and I turned out to be right, but, I mean, you weren't right with many of these tight ends because not very many were even startable. I think there was... What was it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 tight ends. So there was a round of tight end ones out there, and most of them were guys you probably either didn't know about or just kind of came out of nowhere. And Cameron Brate was one of those guys. CJ really liked him. I liked the matchup, but I realized that I didn't really like the way that the defense was going to match up against all the skill position players in Tampa Bay. So we kind of had a back and forth on this one, and 1.3 fantasy points. Opportunity was not the solution this week for Cameron Brate. Jared Cook, 1.5. That was CJ's start of the week, or sit of the week, rather. And my sit of the week, Austin Hooper, 1.8. So we were both right there. Austin Safarian-Jenkins, 2.1. Greg Olson, 2.7. Delaney Walker, 3.3. Charles Clay, 3.7. Jason Witten, 3.9. And Jack Doyle, 4.1 fantasy points, among many others that let you down this week. Hopefully you guys were able to persevere and overcome these crap performances and maybe had some of these top streaming options to counterbalance some of these duds. Not much to report in the ways of news because it's Christmas, so almost no reporters are actually reporting. But I'm here for you guys. I'm going to give you what we know and just a couple of key updates for players who are going to be involved in Week 17. I'm pulling from those teams that we mentioned before that have something to play for. Los Angeles Chargers running back Melvin Gordon was spotted with his left foot in a walking boot, and this was later confirmed by head coach Anthony Lynn, so something to monitor there after a good week. And then Tennessee Titans running back DeMarco Murray is reportedly unlikely to play in Week 17. He is believed to have an LCL sprain. He was supposed to get an MRI yesterday. We should be getting some news about that later on today. Those are some of the key injuries, and we'll get a lot more news for you guys. We'll update you on Friday's show. And with that, let's just move very quickly into some waiver wire targets. I'm just going to give you 3 off the top because these are guys that I'm definitely looking for if I'm still alive, and most of these are teams that have something to play for. The Bengals, like I said, they have they want to play spoiler to the Ravens because if the Ravens lose and I think it's either team wins of the AFC one, so that's the Chargers and Titans or the Bills. I forget what the exact circumstance is. One of them will leapfrog. So I think it's the Bills, if I remember correctly. I don't have the tiebreakers up in front of me. Either way, Bengals want to play spoiler. And if Joe Mixon cannot play this week, Giovanni Bernard was really, really good yet again with a big workload. So he's a guy I'm looking to stream this week, only owned in 26.7% of leagues. At the wide receiver position, Keenan Cole for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, they don't have much to play for, but this is a guy who has been very good, and they want to get more reps with him going into the playoffs. And a very good matchup against the Titans, who gave up, 4 touchdowns to Jared Goff last week. So I like Keenan Cole's opportunity in this game. So he's only owned in 12.5% of leagues. Not as much to play for, but I believe that they're going to keep their starters in. I have to, again, look at all the tie-breaking scenarios. But the Jags, I know they've clinched, obviously, a playoff seed, but I think they're fighting to hold on to the number 3 seed, if I remember correctly. So they have something to technically play for. The Chiefs are right behind them, 1 win behind. And then Charles Clay. Guys, I know it's not a very sexy pick. I know I've been on and off this guy, and I've been pretty much right for the majority of the year. Good matchups, bad matchups. He has a decent matchup this coming week. He's gotten 10 or 9 targets in each of the last 2 weeks, so he's heavily involved Much better matchup. I like his opportunity this week. Only owned in 16.1% of leagues. So if you need a streaming option at tight end, based on the limited news that we have as of this recording, he's a guy that I would recommend trying to pick up. And of course, we'll have a lot more information for you guys on Friday's show. So those are just some names I wanted to mention to you guys. Go through some updates, give you some headlines, and I guess I'll get out of here and I'll get back to the holiday celebrations. So, hopefully you guys enjoyed. I wanted to make sure you guys got some of the news while you're commuting, driving, and just getting your updates as you normally do. And we will be back on Friday with a full show with a lot of analysis to tackle the dumpster fire that is Week 17. Guys, please, I beg of you. We're going to do this for you guys every year, but for the quality of your leagues and your own mental health as well as ours, get your leagues changed to standard where it goes only to Week 16. You can do lots of fun custom ways of doing it, whether it's double elimination, top 2 seeds get a bye, or just a typical 2-round playoffs, semifinals, finals. There's a lot of different ways to tackle it on all the websites. Just make sure that the finale is Week 16, because there are so many teams, like I've said many a time now, that have nothing to play for, and that I promise you, it will affect your game in some way, shape, or form. So with that, I am out of here. Again, my name is Griffin. I am your host. I am the champion of my league of record. I honestly haven't checked our listener league. I'm not trying to shortchange anybody here. We'll get a lot of talk about this. If you did win your league, I want to see you guys tweet out #FFFChamp. We're going to retweet that from our official Twitter page and just give you guys a shout out because, we do this for you guys. We do this to help you guys bring home championships, and we want to be able to celebrate that with you. So again, that's #FFFChamp, and we will see you on Friday when we cover our starts and sits from Week 17. If you want to follow the show, at the FF Fanatics on Twitter, or I am at GPalmerFFF. Get to know me more outside of just football. I'm into a lot of other nerdy fun things. All right, so we're out of here. Everyone, I am out of here. Everyone take care. Have a great week. Hopefully, again, you had safe travels home if you are still traveling, and we will see you guys on Friday. Bye.